This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Elon Musk is one of the most powerful men in the world. A billionaire, a free speech champion, and to his critics, a far-right rabble-rouser. But for someone so public, there's one part of his life that's less well known.
So he told people that Elon Musk had put private investigators on him.
From Tortoise, this is Elon's Spies, a journey into Musk's private world. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and follow the feed to make sure you don't miss an episode.
Warning: this episode contains references to suicide. It's the evening of March 22nd.
There was an opening at the Whitney Museum.
And Hilary Maslin is rushing down a busy road on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
And I wasn't planning on going, but I thought I would go and see if I could find somebody that had seen Mark.
Mark's not returning her calls, and their last conversation didn't go well.
We had a phone call in which he talked about how upset he was that we were splitting up. And then we made some plans, and then I didn't hear from him. I started to get worried.
She's been trying to reach Mark for days.
I called him and I said, Mark, I'm trying to get a hold of you and your mother's trying to get a hold of you. And if you don't call me back, I'm going to call the police. That's what I said to him.
She hurries to the entrance of the museum, where people are queuing for an opening reception. She's hoping Mark's there, or at least someone who knows where he is. She spots someone from the art scene, someone who might have heard from him, and zeroes in on them, rushing to get her words out.
I said, have you seen Mark Lombardi? And they said, no, but I'm sure he's okay.
The pit in her stomach grows.
And I said, no, he's not okay. I know he's not okay.
Hilary is desperate to get into the museum and find more people who might have seen Mark. And when the doors finally open, Hilary bursts in, still hopeful she might run into Mark herself. Until her phone rings. It's Mark's mother, Shirley.
She said, has anybody seen him? And I said, no. And she said, then go call the police. So I went outside and there were some police standing at the curb. I said, I'm worried about, this man that we hadn't heard from him. He was taking sleeping pills. They asked me how old he was.
The police try to get more information from Hilary, but something doesn't feel right.
And then they said, go home, we'll call you later.
She just has a gut feeling. For a moment, Hilary stares as the police walk away from her. She can't move. People brush by her on the sidewalk, as if she's not there.
At that point, I knew he was dead. I remember because I went out to a side street and I cried. I just knew he was dead.
This is The Illuminator, Art, Conspiracy, and Madness. The story of conceptual artist Mark Lombardi's rise to fame, whose brilliant genius had devastating consequences. I'm Akko Mitchell, and this is the final episode of The Illuminator, Death-Defying Acts. Racked with dread, Hilary calls the police later that night. The police officer who responds to her distress call is Officer Michael Hendricks.
His Girlfriend he had just broke up with called out of concern for his well-being. And that's what brought us to the house.
He's in the hallway just outside Mark's apartment. He can hear something.
When I got there, the music was playing. So I thought he was home.
He calls out, identifies himself as an officer.
But obviously the door was locked and nobody answered the door. I could have broke the door in too, but I didn't want to have to secure the door.
So he starts looking for another way in.
The old doors just have windows on top of them where you could push them in.
After some effort, Officer Hendricks manages to climb through the window above the door.
Once I looked through and saw him hanging.
Mark Lombardi's death was 24 years ago. But Hendricks still remembers the unsettling scene in front of him.
He hung a bottle. I think it was champagne. It was a large bottle. It was also hanging next to him.
Mark is already dead when Officer Hendricks arrives. He is not allowed to touch the body. He can only check the apartment for evidence. He looks for a note, but can't find one. And as he stands there, waiting for forensics to arrive, Officer Hendricks catches a glimpse of an artist struggling to hold himself together.
The typical artist apartment. It wasn't filthy, but it wasn't like you could say everything is in the right place.
Mark's pencils, papers, and stacks of research are everywhere. Very few belongings. Evidence of a chaotic life, but a devoted one. One that produced art so unique that there is no replicating it.
It was devastating.
The news of Mark's death soon spreads among his friends. A few days later, Hilary finds herself back at the Whitney, meeting with friends Rafael Vargas Suarez and Lindsay Noble. They go to see Mark's drawing, the masterpiece that is BCCI.
I went with Lindsay and Raphael, and we went and we brought a bunch of flowers and put it at the base of his drawing.
Mark had just begun to taste the fruits of his labor. It seemed like he'd had it snatched away from him, right when he was on the cusp of something more.
The whole thing made zero sense.
When Raphael gets the call from Hilary, he's completely lost for words.
The morning that Hilary called me, I think I didn't even leave my house for the next day. I was just in shock. I couldn't process it. It's still such a strange thing to think about, that he was just having this meteoric rise. And then it just stopped. Like it never happened, you know.
Back at the apartment, Mark's parents are the first to arrive, 5 hours after a call from the police. In the days and weeks that follow, others close to Mark stop by.
Mark's, at that time, ex-wife went up to look at his place after he died, and they went in his closet.
According to Andy Feehan, Day Barlow finds 6 unworn suits, but not just any suits.
And he had 6 identical suits by Giorgio Armani. 6 identical suits.
Day finds them in the closet, brand new. Signs of manic behavior that his family and friends now believe could have been a symptom of bipolar disorder.
You know, you don't do that unless you're just so wound up that you go, okay, well, I'm going to sell $1 million worth of work in a week, and so I'm going to go buy some suits. And Mark, you know, he had good taste, so he went to Armani in New York and bought a half dozen suits, you know, and why not?
It's a far cry from the man who only wore a brown suede jacket and the same jeans to important events. But those close to Mark remember another anxiety eating away at him, one that stalks the creatives of the world. The fear of what next? Despite all the success of his greatest work, the BCCI drawing, Mark was still plagued by an endless desire to make more, to be more.
He never was comfortable, let me put it that way.
Irv Tepper watched Mark's transformation from the confident artist at the Whitney Museum showing, shaking everyone's hand and celebrating his work, to the paranoid, insecure obsessive, confining himself to his apartment.
I don't know what he was looking for, what he thought selling his work would do for him. But all of a sudden felt the pressure of coming up with the next idea.
For a minute, he thought he was out of ideas, which is absolutely shocking.
Detectives question Mark's family for 2 days. It's routine procedure after a death, and quickly the case is closed. Police declare his death a suicide. But this doesn't stop theories of foul play, that Mark may have found himself more deeply involved in his investigations than he had previously admitted. An answer may lie with one of Mark's sources, Houston real estate developer Bill White. Bill had revealed to Mark claims about his former business partner James R. Bath, namely that James was a frontman for the CIA and a go-between for Saudi investors in the U.S. James would later end up on one of Mark's drawings, called George W. Bush, Harken Energy, and Jackson Stevens, 5th version. 13 lines connect to him, more than any other name. Among those linked to him are George W. Bush and Sheikh Salim bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's half-brother.
I reported all this to the FBI, and they convened a meeting with me.
Bill tells the FBI everything he knows about James and his alleged links to the Saudis.
I was interviewed and deposed under oath for over an hour.
But as Bill leaves the meeting, he gets into the elevator with FBI Special Agent Mike McCoy.
As we pushed the button for the ground floor, Mike started shaking his head back and forth. And I said, Mike, what's wrong? Don't you believe what I said? And he said, I know what you said is true. The problem is that somebody's going to end up killed.
Bill doesn't know what to say. He thought the FBI were going to help him. But then, as the elevator reaches the ground floor, the agent shakes his head again.
And I said, what is it now, Mike? He said, well, the real tragedy of this is that the guy who pulls the trigger is going to believe in his heart of hearts that he's doing his patriotic duty.
It takes a moment for Bill to understand what the agent is saying.
So in other words, they'll tell an assassin that either Bath or I or both are spies or turncoats, and that we deserve to be eliminated.
When Bill White hears about Mark's death, instead of shock, there's a flutter of dread that he could have been targeted.
I thought it was bizarre. A lot of people that helped me have been lost along the way, you know? And then the crooks all got rewarded.
Mark, though, was always well aware of the risk.
Okay, so the people who have written the stories that I've derived my information from are still walking around. Now, in a few minor instances, there have been journalists assassinated. It has happened.
One journalist Mark might be referring to here is Danny Casalero. He was reportedly investigating a mega conspiracy involving BCCI. He was found dead in August 1991. Authorities ruled the death was a suicide, but his family and others persisted in calls for a full-scale inquiry. We'll be back after this short break.
Hey, it's Emma Chamberlain. I designed these new glasses for Warby Parker, and I basically can't take them off. Like, I'm showering in them and sleeping in them. They're just that good. Go see them all at warbyparker.com. And you know what? Have a good day too. Okay? All right? Bye.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
There is a group of people, like Mark's friend Lindsay Noble, who believe the artist's paranoia was warranted, that he was being watched, and that he would soon be targeted because the information he gathered challenged the dominance of powerful political elites like the Bush dynasty, the Vatican, the Mafia, and the CIA.
I have my theories that, I think he got murdered. So, because I don't think he killed himself.
One question on the lips of this group of people is, why did Mark offload his work to the Pierogi Gallery in that last-minute handover, when he was starting to sell it so successfully? Susan Swenson of the Pierogi Gallery in Brooklyn saw it very simply.
Well, he said because there was a lot more interest in his work, he felt like he couldn't focus because he was spending too much time fielding calls and stuff. So I think he just wanted to offload some of that.
But others, like his ex-girlfriend Hilary, aren't so sure.
Nobody really knows whether he killed himself or was murdered. He came and brought his work to Pierogi Gallery. And did he do that because he thought something was going to happen or because he was going to kill himself? It's really mysterious.
Everyone agrees that it doesn't make sense. Mark may have hidden his anxieties, but why would he end his life when he was just on the cusp of international success? Curator Robert Hobbs has only one conclusion.
We really don't know about Mark Lombardi's end. We still don't know whether it was self-inflicted or it was something else. All I can say is that it was truly a tragedy for him, but also a tragedy because so many different scandals have happened later that would benefit from a Mark Lombardi look or handling it.
What would Mark be doing if he was alive now? One can only imagine.
Devin Golden supported Mark's early work as his unofficial art dealer. He knows that if Mark was alive today, he would be a triumph of art and investigation, especially in the wake of 9/11. And what would that drawing look like?
Oh my God, there's just so much. The world's so much worse than it was. I can imagine Mark doing a drawing about the Saudis and Trump and Jared Kushner. Oh my God, that's a whole drawing right there. He would have had a field day.
In the weeks after Mark died, Susan at the Pierogi worked to establish his legacy and get his work displayed in public for everyone to see.
We felt that that's what he would have wanted, so that it would be exhibited and preserved and could be lent out for traveling shows and things.
These days, a simple hand-drawn sketch by Mark Lombardi can go for as much as $6,000, while the larger formal drawings go for tens of thousands. But the death effect. When the value of art increases dramatically due to the sudden death of an artist, is not wholly reflective of the real value of Mark's work.
One of the things that's really interesting about Mark's work is how relevant it still is. People look at his work and they don't realize it was made 25 years ago. It seems like it was made today, and I think it was very prescient.
The larger legacy he left behind informs the work of data analytics companies, whistleblowers like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden.
There's a website that has expanded on what Mark was doing, and that would have been the next thing for Mark. He would have had to have created a digital database.
We'll actually Xerox the index and then begin to pick through, looking for corporate names of individuals.
So that you could either track it visually or simply connect data one thing at a time and have stuff come up.
I guess you could perhaps also call it a simple register.
Because it was unmanageable by the time he was making those drawings. I mean, they were 20 feet long, you know? That's too much. How could you even retain all that stuff? You can't.
But Mark had a very specific way of working.
The cards I prefer over a database, again, because I don't really enjoy sitting at a desk, being at a monitor.
And whether there was a madness in the method, it resulted in some of the most groundbreaking art the world has seen. Despite the gravity of the subjects he probed and the seriousness with which he approached his art, Mark was known universally as a fun guy with a wicked sense of humor.
I'm certainly thrilled that other people want to look at it as well.
Mark wanted to subvert the idea that the work he was doing was a conspiracy by revealing the facts as he came across them.
He had a sense of humor, and a lot of people haven't realized that. So he would pass out business cards about his death-defying acts of revelations of espionage and other things of this sort, and hand it out to people.
And everyone in his life got one, especially when they would voice fear that he was getting too close to dangerous subject matter.
There was a camaraderie.
Mel Chen, an artist who knew Mark from his Houston days, deeply respected his work and his point of view.
He took his time when voicing his opinion. He seemed to care about art and was showing work that was not conventional.
Mel was so inspired by his friend's work, he created a graphic novella and film called 9/11/9/11 about the 2001 terrorist attacks and the 1973 coup d'etat in Chile. There's an homage to Mark in it.
She showed me everything.
This map of a bank scandal is art. Mark Lombardi. Lombardi.
I purposely put that in there because I wanted more people to know about Mark. To me, that was an important gesture. I was honored to know him and be a peer alongside him, you know?
Mark's memorial takes place several months after his death. It's in Syracuse, New York, where he was raised. It's mostly a family event, but a select few friends are invited, including Joe Amrine and Susan Swenson, who have already held a memorial for the art community back in Brooklyn. Kathy Hurd, the architect who hosted Mark's wedding, is also invited, along with his ex-wife, Day Barlow.
Day was asked to speak, and since I was somebody who knew his family, Day and I decided to go together.
Mark's mother, Shirley, has baked a rich Italian cream wedding cake that is cut and passed around, a morbid reminder of the last time Kathy had met the family.
It was not an emotional kind of thing because we had all accepted at that point that he was gone.
Mark never considered himself a conspiracy theorist. He was adamant he didn't use any information that wasn't already public. Yet sometimes, his art would make connections that no one had previously found. Mark, beyond the grave, keeps us guessing.
It was truly an inspired direction. And it's almost like a person who finally makes something that you say, I don't even know what this says, but the desire to want to know what it says is driving me profoundly.
Mark's method continues to propel advances in data technology, journalistic and investigative techniques. But beyond the artist, the man, Mark Lombardi, the father, husband, son, he leaves behind a different impression.
Mark was really a sweet man. He was a really good guy, you know, he had a really lovely heart and he had a lot of passion, and I'm just really sad that he's gone, you know.
Mark's art lingers today, like a whisper, revealing tangled webs of power and secrets that haunt the mind long after the canvas fades.
A real pleasure you can come by and take a look at this work.
If you'd like to see Lombardi's expansive BCCI drawing in full, visit brazen.fm/Illuminator. If you liked The Illuminator, you can buy merchandise from the series at shop.brazen.fm. This was the final episode of The Illuminator, Art, Conspiracy, and Madness. It's a Brazen production hosted by me, Akko Mitchell. Farah Halim is the showrunner and scriptwriter. Zuben Kem is the reporter and associate producer. Megan Dean and Charlie Barlow are story editors. Ian Chambers is senior producer, sound designer, and composer. Claire Urbarn is the production manager. Mariangel Gonzalez is senior producer and project manager. Ryan Ho is creative director, and Julian Pradier is the cover art designer. Additional design by Andrea Claridge. Lucy Woods is head of research, and Arnav Benaikia is fact checker. Bradley Hope and Tom Wright are executive producers. Mark Lombardi interview excerpts are sourced from the Andy Mann Video Archive, courtesy of media arts organization Aurora Picture Show. Subscribe to Brazen Plus to listen to ad-free episodes. For other amazing stories, please follow us on Instagram at brazen.fm, on X at brazenfm, or go to our website, brazen.fm.